Hey everyone, welcome to Mull to 5. I'm JD, and as usual, I'm here playing the jankiest Tier 3 Spicy Rogue Brews for your viewing pleasure. First things first, if you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It's a quick and easy way to show your support and help out the channel. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Main Phase Media. These videos would not be possible without them, so please check them out for all your graphic design and video production needs. And finally, if you have your own janky masterpiece you'd like to see me play, please leave a comment, or you can shoot an email to the address in the description below. And with that, we'll get straight to the deck tech. And today, I'm playing a deck I like to call Rally the Aristocrats. So it's an Aristocrats deck, which, for those of you that don't know, an aristocrat style deck is something that is centered around like sacking creatures for value and lots of interesting synergies that kind of work around those mechanics. So one of the namesake cards from the original deck is Cartel Aristocrat. So I guess this is as good a place as any to start. So there's basically a few pieces to the deck. The first being your sack outlets. So Cartel Aristocrat is one of them, one of the namesake cards. It's a 2/2 for 2. It's a standard bear, but the ability is really what we're putting her to use for. She sacks another creature for free at instant speed, and then Cartel Aristocrat gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. So it's a free instant speed sack outlet, which is something the deck really needs to perform. And then the benefit you get from sacrificing is actually pretty great. You can use her as a blocker and give her protection from that color, whatever you're blocking, to prevent some damage. You can, if we're on the offensive, we could use her to push through blockers by giving protection from a certain color. We could do protection from red to protect ourselves from like an Anger of the Gods. There's a lot of different uses for protection. It's pretty handy, stapled onto that sack ability. So the second sack outlet is Viscera. It's a 1-drop. It's a 1/1. Again, not super impressive stats, but it's a sack outlet. And this one's ability, again, instant speed, free. And this can even sack to itself, unlike Cartel Aristocrat, which is sacrifice another creature. Viscera can sack itself, and we get to scry 1. So this helps us dig if we need to hit our land drops. We can scry till we find it. If we want to find some other pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, the scry ability really helps us dig for it. So that's the first piece, is the sack outlets. Next is really kind of, I guess, the core of the deck, is our Blood Artist and Zula Cutthroat. So they're very, very similar cards. 2-drops, black and colorless, with subtle differences. So Blood Artist is a 0/1, so no power, but it says whenever Blood Artist or any other creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Whereas Zulaport gets 1 power, so it actually has some power as opposed to being a 0/1. But the downside is it only triggers when a creature we control dies as opposed to any creature, which isn't a huge downside. Most of the time we're going to be sacking our own stuff. We really only care about our own stuff dying anyway. Other creatures dying is, a nice, of course, bonus incidental advantage, but for our purposes, it doesn't matter a ton. So, in effect, the same card. This is, like I said, kind of the core of the deck. The idea is to just be sacking a ton of creatures for value and different effects, and while draining our opponent. And so this can start to really add up. If you have a couple of these guys on the battlefield and you start sacrificing multiple creatures per turn, that's, 2-4 damage. That's pretty good reach. It's like, a lightning bolt or 2 every turn. So it can start to stack up, and we can hopefully close out the game with the draining ability from these 2 cards. And so another piece is sacrifice fodder. Things, we need creatures to sack for value. So the first one is Doomed Traveler. It's a nice 1-drop creature. And so when Doomed Traveler dies, you get a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So basically, it's just a 1-drop creature that you can sacrifice twice. It's a great chump blocker. It gets to chump block twice. You can sacrifice it twice. It replaces itself with a spirit, which these spirits can actually be pretty good. Since they're evasive with flying, you can kind of peck in for some damage if the time is right to kind of finish off the final few points of damage. So Doom Traveler is our first kind of sacrifice fodder. And then the other is Lingering Souls, which is an amazing card in our deck. For just 1 card, we get 4 spirit creature tokens. So 1 card and we get 4 creatures to sack and drain our opponent with. So Lingering Souls is amazing. It has flashback, so it can be cast from the graveyard, which brings us to, I guess, the other piece here, which is Stitcher's Supplier. This one mills us. So I guess it's technically more sacrifice fodder. We don't really need it for anything beside... it's doing its job by entering and leaving the battlefield. So we cast it, it mills 3. We can sack it, it mills 3 more. Great. Now we have our graveyard stocked. And hopefully we've milled some Lingering Souls, which we can flash back for 2. Or we've just stocked up our graveyard with a bunch of creatures because... the other namesake card of the deck is Rally the Ancestor. So this is kind of our combo finish, our combo win con. It's double white and X. Return each creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. We have to exile them at the beginning of my next upkeep, but we bring back literally everything in the graveyard with X or less converted mana cost. So usually we're casting this for 4, and that will hit every single creature. We don't have any creatures above 3 converted mana cost. You could even cast it for 3 if we don't have any 2-drops in the graveyard. And it's an instant, so we can do this at instant speed, which is really amazing. We can cast Rally during the opponent's attack step, and all of a sudden we've got a ton of blockers, so we can block, take no damage, sacrifice everything to one of our sack outlets, drain a bunch with our Blood Artists and Zula Cutthroats, and then yes, they all get exiled at our next upkeep, but at that point, hopefully they've done their job, and we've drained them up for enough. So that's what the Stitcher Supplier is there for, to stock the graveyard for Rally. Even if we don't find a Stitcher Supplier to really beef up the graveyard, usually there's enough targets to get a decent amount of value out of Rally, because our creatures are dying all the time. We don't care if Doom Traveler dies, he replaces himself, that can go to the graveyard. We have a lot of creatures we can throw away. So that's the main core of the deck. We do have a couple support cards in Fatal Push. Works really well in our deck. It's pretty easy to trigger Revolt. We do have 4 Marsh Flats, so fetch lands will trigger it, and we also we're sacking things all the time. So it's pretty easy to get Revolt off and be able to kill most relevant threats in Modern. I went with Fatal Push over Path to Exile because Path doesn't really play nice with Blood Artist and Zulaport. These guys trigger when a creature dies. Well, it doesn't matter for Zulaport, I guess, because it doesn't worry about opponent's creatures. But I should say it doesn't play nice with Blood Artist. For exiling something, it doesn't trigger Blood Artist. So I'd rather be killing something, destroying something with a Fatal Push, because that the synergy works a little bit better. We do have a couple paths in the sideboard for stuff that Fatal Push can't hit, things with a bigger converted mana cost than 4. So we can bring those in if necessary, but in general, Fatal Push works better in our deck. And then finally, the last kind of utility card is Inquisition of Kozilek. It's a great discard spell. It kind of just supports the rest of our deck. We can pull their best card out of their hand. Hopefully, prolong the game, keep us going to where we can combo out and win. Mana base is pretty simple, just 21 lands. Concealed Courtyard. We've got Godless Shrine, Marsh Flats for a fetch land, basic Plains, basic Swamp. I have one Shambling Vent. I don't like having tapped lands, especially with so few. We're only running 21 lands. So I didn't want a ton of comes into play tapped lands, but one Shambling Vent is nice just to, have an extra creature on the board if we get nothing else going on. We can attack in or block with the Vent. And then one Vault of the Archangel, which again, it taps for colorless, so I didn't want a ton of them. But having one as a kind of a utility land is nice, giving everything Death Touch and Lifelink. Lifelink will, bring up our life total a bunch, so we can hopefully, we can pad it, prolong the game, so hopefully we can win. Death Touch, we can wipe out all their, attackers or blockers. So Vault is a very good card. A little pricey to activate, and again, it taps for colorless, so I only wanted one. But yeah, 21 lands. I think that covers everything in the main deck. Sideboard, Burnt Forge Tender is great against any decks running red. I mean, we don't need a ton of help against Burn because we're usually gaining a decent amount of life with our Blood Artists and Zula ports, so Burn generally has a tough time with us anyway. But Burnt and Forge Tenders kind of help seal the deal. They can block Goblin Guides and all day long. It can also sack to hit like an Anger of the Gods. If we think our opponent's going to be running Anger of the Gods, we can bring Burnt and Forge Tender in, sack itself to basically counter the Anger of the Gods, essentially. So Forge Tender's great. As I said, Path to Exile for any creatures that Fatal Push can't hit. Nile Spellbomb for graveyard-based decks. Because we utilize our own graveyard, we don't want like Relic of Progenitus or something, which exiles both graveyards. Nile Spellbomb hits only the opponents, so this is what we want for graveyard hate in our deck. Stony Silence for artifact-based decks. And Damping Sphere for Tron and Storm. And Sorcerer's Spyglass is kind of a catch-all, utility thing. It can come in against Control for their Teferis and their Jaces. Come in against Tron for Karn or whatever. Oblivion Stone, that sort of thing. So Sorcerer's Spyglass kind of rounds out the sideboard as a one-of. And that's my build of Aristocrats. There are lots of different ways you can build this deck. I've seen Abzan ones. I've seen more graveyard-based ones with like Bloodghast and Gravecrawlers and Bridge from Below and kind of more like a graveyard synergy focused. Mine's kind of a combo build with Rally, but a similar card you could use is Return to the Ranks. So I've seen more of kind of grindy value-based versions, less combo, more value with Return to the Ranks, Dark Confidants, and if you go that direction, you could make it more human-based. You could bring in Champion of the Parish, that sort of thing. So there's lots of different ways you can run this. Lots of flex spots outside of kind of the core of the Blood Artist, Cartel, Sack Outlet, package. There's lots of flex spots you can play around with. So this is how I decided to run mine. We'll see how it goes. This might not be the most ideal version, but this is what looked the most fun to me. So we're going to try this in a friendly Modern League and see how we do with Rally the Aristocrats. I will see you guys in the first match. Thanks for watching.